Space cowboy in the galaxy wide, spreading love can't hide his stride. Venus to Mars, every starry night, laughing loud, shining so bright. Rocket boots dancing on the moon, charming hearts with his cosmic tune. Guitar strumming under alien sun, he won't stop till the day's won. He's the intergalactic gigolo, galaxy-wide he's the show. Spreading love everywhere he goes, stars and laughter in his flow.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Dakota Franson, specialist of the strange and intergalactic gigolo. Crazy times we're in. How's it going, Lawrence? See, hey, look, nuts. I got my tea too. I saw you message that. It's like, shit, some tea sounds good before a show. Well, certainly some strange times we live in. For tonight's episode, I kind of wanted to focus on two main things. That would be the fires going on within the Los Angeles area, as well as a little bit on the TikTok ban, since that's going to be tomorrow, probably Eastern time for over here. So, well, at least it seems like it. Out of all the bans that have been proposed, it looks like this is one of the more serious ones. But is it just me, or does it seem like there's obvious ulterior motives behind the TikTok ban? And trust me, I'll connect it to what's going on with the fires. Being that TikTok was widely regarded as being quite unregulated as it started to become a little bit more popular, especially towards the pandemic, and everybody was just looking for something to do. Yes, it did participate in certain censorship activities, but not to the same extent as what we're seeing coming out with Google, YouTube, Facebook, all these other platforms, basically confirming what conspiracy theorists have been saying for years. Dear Lord, can you imagine if Mel Gibson remade Conspiracy Theory today, made a sequel? God. The man's got plenty of source material to go off of. But I digress. In spite of all the controversies, the obvious tags when it comes to social media that slowly being taken over to another platform, Red Note, as a very ill-educated Boston Tea Party, as some people are trying to call it, for people who are trying to fight back against the TikTok ban. And I say it's highly ill-advised because Red Note is still a Chinese originated app, very similar to TikTok in a lot of ways. And people are complaining that this app is taking down anything affiliated with the LGBTQ community. And I can't help find but a sense of irony behind this. It goes to show how ill-educated people are about the ways of the world, considering that in China, it is actually illegal for men who happen to be feminine in appearance, maybe not even their fault, they're just skinny, easy to pass off as women. They're banned from being on major broadcasting networks over there because they're wanting to enforce the idea that men should be big, strong, all this. But I suppose when there's certain aspects to social media that feed into addiction centers in the brain, thinking goes out the window. And everybody who's established some sort of persona on social media would take a hit. I mean, let's think about it. How much is being hid behind Facebook groups, Roblox communities, Discord servers that are not regularly monitored by any sort of quality control? And so much shit goes down between nasty old hags spreading gossip about people they're arguing with to literal human trafficking, pedophile rings. It's almost to an extent where some people are making the argument say, yeah, Facebook should go first. It's causing more problems for it. And maybe you're right. And people are trying to follow the idea that's being put out that TikTok monitors your location, monitors everything you do on your phones. So does everything else that's on your phone right now. So does Google, so does Facebook, so does YouTube. Anything that's being used to your OnlyFans is not secure. Your Pornhub accounts, people, are not secure. And some of the way these bans are going goes to show that none of these lawmakers actually know a damn thing when it comes to technology. Except for how it can be used to spy on the public. Now, granted, there are some legitimate security concerns that should be taken into account. But if you are to look into, say, ethical hackers, just as an example, people who make a living basically showing all the different ways that you can be fucked over by technology. Am I using strong language in this? Yes! Are you bothered by it? Probably. But I need to emphasize this point. One gentleman, what's his name? He's a real scrawny guy. I believe he tends to go by the name Zero Date. He tends to go by the username Zero Daily. He talks about all sorts of different technical hacks people can use to hack into your phones, your cars, your Wi-Fi networks. And yeah, like this remark here from Dots, your phones spy on you 24/7, all the time. It's why you could be talking about a certain subject that all of a sudden within 24 hours, you're seeing advertisements for that. I'll be honest. I've taken advantage of some of those marketing ploys that a lot of these social media networks utilize in order to try to find information about products and services I'm looking out for, even some to help build bald and bonkers. It's how I became aware. When I go back to Zero Daily, it is incredibly easy to stalk someone's information if you know where to look. For all you Instagram fanatics out there who have to post every little date you go on, every little meal you're on, did you know that there are actual websites out there that if you upload the pictures that you took and put on Instagram, that it can sort through several databases to find every other camera that was looking at you at the time that photo was being taken. This stuff is out there, people. Hence why a lot of push is being put towards these smart cities. Because again, while these lawmakers may not necessarily be aware of all the different ways that technology can screw people over, they're aware of how it can be used to essentially monitor everything we're doing under the guise that there are some truly despicable things happening. Yet, whenever these despicable actions, such as child pornography and all this push to try to normalize pedophilia as of late, nothing ever gets done. Los Angeles area, there are several reports of individuals who try pedobaiting, the practice of trying to lure out pedophiles to expose them, get them arrested, all that. We're being told that in spite of the police department's best efforts to push and document, Los Angeles County prosecutors will not go after pedophiles because, and the legitimate reason behind this, it's because there's too damn many. There's too damn many. Fear of prison overpopulation. As if the United States hasn't utilized the prison systems as an opening, as a loophole for modern day slavery in several cases. Now, granted, several of the jailers, the prisoners, are happy for the opportunities to have this work just so they have something to do every day. But I digress. These smart cities, don't get me wrong, I'm a tech guy. If I can get my hands on some new fancy gadget, see what I can do with it, chances are I probably will. To see what kind of mayhem can be done, more or less. And here lies the problem, the pattern. Why is it that all of a sudden, when there's plans announced to integrate these smart cities to their fullest designs, electronic vehicle charging stations, constant surveillance, artificial intelligence integrations, smart home devices similar to your Amazons and your Siris, all this integration for constant surveillance. Hell, police departments have tried to issue subpoenas in order to collect information that has likely been recorded through an Alexa device in murder investigations. But Amazon would shut it down. And I'm saying this as there's a new Amazon warehouse that's gone in and fucked up all sorts of mailing here in my area. And while, yeah, it may seem promising, it may seem amazing and sparkly and all this, why is it that whenever there's plans set in stone to put in these smart cities, you have issues with fires burning out of control? We have Lahaina, several mysterious circumstances behind that, to where it seemed like active efforts to shut down any recovery efforts to help the people that are being affected by the fires that were being blocked off. Same thing going on with Greater Los Angeles. You have water reserves being depleted. You have certain areas where the fires started being declared no-fly zones that had to be eventually lifted so firemen can actually step forward and try to spray the area to get these things under control. You have insurance companies shutting down policies that would allow people to get the funds they need to rebuild their homes months in advance without any sort of notice. And something else that not a lot of people realize when it comes to the state of California, about 80% of their water reserves is owned by a single family? How the fuck did that happen? And in that case, where it's well documented that they were cutting off water reserves when the state of California is always in a constant state of drought, you would think that criminal charges should be pressed for something like that. You know what I mean? I should really be careful about how I'm saying this because the last time I brought up this type of subject, I had relatives in a rollover accident. They're okay. They survived. You know, they're healed from their wounds physically. Mentally, they've always been gone. And I say that with love, knowing that they watch this. Well, just looking at the chat here real quick. That's absolutely. Phone constantly spies on you. In fact, if you have some of the latest models of iPhone that have like the IR facial recognition, that camera is constantly going off like every 5 seconds to capture the latest data about your face. They say as a measure for the fact that sometimes people's face can get swollen or they may lose a little bit of weight, gain a little bit of weight, grow a little bit of facial hair. Try to track those changes so people aren't locked out of their phones because their face changed. And if you don't believe this is happening, do yourself a favor. If you can get your hands on some sort of night vision equipment, doesn't have to be anything expensive, set your phone down, take a few steps back, point the night vision at your iPhone and see how many times it flashes. In fact, Wi-Fi networks, when it comes back, going back to these smart cities, Wi-Fi networks can't even be trusted because with the integration of artificial intelligence to a lot of these, radio waves and how they bend around the human body can be used to see people through walls even more effectively than thermal. Practically get the entire outline of an individual. And in some cases, the details are so specific. Sorry, I thought I heard ransacking through my house. Can't tell if I'm either being broken into or it's my cats being assholes. I have a weapon! And I don't miss! Yeah. Almost reminds me of the times when we would talk about the Russians on here and all of a sudden the chat would be filled by Russian women. I was like, dear God, it's the first line of defense for the KGB. No, I don't smoke enough shit for this. Anyway, the Wi-Fi network surveillance, ever since the integration of artificial intelligence, the images produced by these programs can be so specific they can actually track potential growths on the human body. They can see where someone may have a cyst developing. That's how specific these things are getting. They can tell have a rough idea of what's in your pocket, who's in what room and where, how many animals you got. So many different ways that these programs can be used against the human population. And they're not even trying to hide the fact that in the spirit of fighting climate change as their excuse, these cities are meant to house large populations within a small confined area that would not have to leave outside of a 15-minute walk in order to get anything they needed. Is it just me, or Does it seem like these are active efforts to essentially start strapping people into people zoos like certain AI programs have talked about wanting to do? The parallels are uncanny, my friends. But here, if you're watching, don't be shy. Voice your opinions. Because it may be a very good idea that for the conversation of the smart cities, being that there are active recurring patterns to ensure that anything that can go wrong in dealing with the resulting fires will go wrong. It might be a good idea to start making some searches to figure out if anywhere near you is going to be potentially be hit. Now, I will address a couple of things that have actually been brought up by some of my contacts within fire that are active fire, and some of who are actually been sent down to help with the greater Los Angeles fires. Yes, a big thing about what happened with Los Angeles is the Santa Ana winds. Wind catches fire just right, it's going to cause some problems. And as far as reports of the fire seemingly skipping, you have to take into consideration embers flying through the air. But that does not exactly rule out why all of a sudden things of a certain pretty shade of blue are surviving, now does it? And a lot of these people, you can tell that they're not expecting retaliation for some of these remarks, for some of these actions. If you take into consideration the idea that these were active, they were deliberate acts to essentially start clearing out the land for these smart cities, as the story goes. You can almost tell that they weren't accounting for people to fight back, to start spreading information. So, what do? You ever sit down and watch certain individuals who discuss like ET disclosure events, spiritual concepts, all that? You ever notice how none of the so-called critics can ever present a valid argument? They actually try to counter with genuine skepticism. What do I mean by that? Say certain individuals that we all know and love go to talk about the dangers of channeling. Instead of trying to call out the fact that several spiritual concepts that seem to revolve around channeling may have something to do with seizures in the brain, enforcing the idea that yes, these things are dangerous, but not necessarily for the right reasons. There's no active debate to try to answer what's actually going on. It's just about discrediting who's talking. So you go to talk about something that gets a little too close to home for some people, they try to attack your character. They try to attack your well-being. Tim Ballard, when Sound of Freedom started coming out, and all the accusations that came up against him. According to the evidence, none of it was true. But yet there was active efforts from high-profile individuals, mind you, to try to discredit character, not discredit what he actually tried to do. his efforts to try to save children. Why is that? I have a theory in some of these regards that these critics physically, mentally cannot handle ideas presented that try to change any potential cognitive biases they have. And when something is presented that threatens them, that threatens their views, makes them feel stupid, they go on the offense. When everybody else is sitting at the sidelines like, why the hell are you going after him? What's going on? You know what I'm saying? It should be an interesting conversation. We can't necessarily talk about trying to prevent future incidents, try to call them out before they happen, without doing a little research, like I said, which I was trying to make sure I did before we came on the air so I had the freshest information possible. Because while it does seem like the greater Los Angeles fires are actually starting to get more contained, and hopefully those still missing and the families of those affected find closure, make sure just everybody's okay. There also needs to be a topic of sensitivity that should be brought up a little bit more in these cases, because these are real events that are killing people. Regardless of whether or not your beliefs are, the fact that human life is essentially being sacrificed in order to make these things happen, something needs to be done. And even if you just talk about it, help get the idea circulating, that in itself is such a testament to revolution in itself, in an age where people are being bullied and harassed into suppression, into silence. So I would take the liberty of trying to find some cities that are potential targets. And we have quite a few of the typical. We have quite a few targets on our list here. Ironically, if the direct energy weapon stories have any truth, the story that may or may not have, I cannot confirm or deny the suspicion behind it, other than the rollover did happen. I can dig up both photos of the car, but one of these areas on the list is something that I've actually called out before. One of the cities that's being considered to become a smart city, we're looking at Dallas, Texas, Chicago, Illinois, Austin, Seattle, San Francisco, DC, Boston, and Pittsburgh. Now, here in Idaho, because there are a lot of spots here that many of the elite actually try to come to for summer vacation homes. In fact, it's actually been brought to my attention that a lot of the homes that are usually empty for about 9 months out of the year up there have been filled because they're the summer vacation homes of some of the people who had their homes burned down in Pasadena, or however it's pronounced. Here in Idaho, there has been talks of trying to put a smart city, but as far as mapping out potential land, that hasn't happened quite yet. Which is something which says a lot, because there's a lot of areas here in Idaho surrounded by heavy mountains that make fighting a lot of these fires very difficult to do. which is speculated to be the reason why Antifa targeted certain places within the South Hills during their riots, even though the spots they burned had nothing. But I'm just going off of discussion. What are some of y'all's thoughts? Let's see, Lawrence. Even your doorbell, it's everywhere. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Having a doorbell camera can help if you're in an area that's being broken into a lot. I know that some high school kids here got arrested not too long ago because they were doing the Kool-Aid Man challenge all over town, and the main thing that helped identify him is that somebody had a ring doorbell that caught their faces. And kudos to the father of one of those kids who are stepping up and making their kids accountable for their actions. You don't see a lot of that too much these days. But I digress. It should also be noted that there is, as usual, whenever there's a major disaster, there's heightened reports of UFO activity. Could it be just stress from dealing with the situation down there? In some cases, it may be. Could it be distortions from all the smoke in the air? Absolutely. But when helicopters are filming something flying through the smoke and you see the smoke actually trailing like something just moved through it fucking quick, our friends from the sky seem to be taking watch. Truly, truly strange times we are in, aren't we? But I would like to know what y'all think. I find it funny that there's almost an ear of silence. Like, yeah, Dakota, we know, but what can we do? What can we do? Because you would think with someone like Elon Musk in the field, being appointed a major government position here in the States, we're going to have heightened push for electronic vehicles. And that may be the case. But you see, here in Idaho, where they're wanting to try to bring in some of these smart cities, and it's probably one of the few things that slowed down the idea, is the fact that the winters here can get very cold, especially in some of the mountain areas where the elite like to hang out. So cold that my mother's car, just as an example, it's like a 2012 Chevy Malibu. A little fancier looking car. Because of the new job she took up, and for how cold it gets overnight, two of the sensors on her car that help monitor tire pressure levels were so frozen over that they're now reading that she has been driving without two tires now for a couple of weeks. She's been driving around just fine. It's just that the sensors are saying there's no tires where there are tires. And for a regular gas vehicle, I mean, hell, there's been several years where schools would get a snow day here because the antifreeze they would put in the diesel to prevent it from freezing over in the school buses would freeze. So with electric vehicles, whose chargers can get so affected by the weather that the batteries are draining faster than they can charge, you essentially have a big, fancy yard decoration with tires and a radio. That's it. And you're probably thinking Dakota's starting to stretch things a little bit. Yeah, that might be. But this is sadly one of those situations where there is no debate. There's individuals trying to say that these fires are being affected by climate change. Well, climate change, it is a real thing. There are natural cycles that the planet does go through. And the climate is especially going to change when you have weather manipulation technology in play, and even some of these direct energy weapons. It can be argued that the systems required to run these weapons could actually cause enough of a disturbance to disrupt weather patterns, depending on the nature of the device itself. Just like the human body always tries to maintain a balance. As long as that balance is fit, you're healthy, you're fine, you got nothing wrong with you. But if something goes to upset that balance, what do you get? You get inflammation, you get fevers, headaches, you get sick, you're coughing up phlegm. It is very, yeah, blue paint combats climate change, like the little Volkswagen, that blue Volkswagen that somehow survived the fire. Dot, you threw me off, man. Anyway, no, I tease with love. I tease with love, but much of what we can see right now, the efforts that is actual climate change, while there is a part of the natural Earth cycle in play, how much of what we're seeing that they're trying to write off as climate change is the Earth running through a fever, trying to correct the balance that was upset? Almost has a little bit of a metaphysical sense to it, right? I mean, hell, for how crazy these last few years have been, it's almost like quoting some of the new Godzilla movies. That the Titans may be the Earth's response to an infection, and mankind is the disease. Woo! But with these deliberate attacks, there's a counter argument behind a lot of UFO disclosure that constantly get presented that can't really be ruled out. As for why people don't really seem to care that it's been confirmed aliens are real. And it's to the point where the people who still try to claim that aliens aren't real, I cite back to my earlier argument that they themselves can't really seem to comprehend what basic science says has always been a possibility. Basic schoolgirl, things you teach 9-year-old science says that we cannot be alone. When you have such a when you look at the diversity of life on Earth, in some of the most extreme climates, there's a species of snail whose shells are made of iron because they live in active volcanoes. We have cases of extremophiles where there's animals that no matter how much you burn them, you dehydrate them, you can put them through every single torturous test to test the limits of their physiology, send them into outer freaking space, and yet they're still kicking. Technically, you could say there's water bears on the moon, man. Blinkers, yeah, absolutely. It's chosen ignorance at this point. But I digress. But going back to the point I was making about the ETs, you would have to wonder why they would even bother with a world that is constantly on a path of self-destruction. Now, a lot of the people that are making this argument, they're not exactly invested into the disclosure talks as to why things are coming out. Especially like that Jeremy Corbell, the latest big whistleblower to come forward, who's saying that there should be talks of a potential craft slowly making its way to Earth that should get here in about 2 years' time. Why would these beings even bother aside from watching us like a reality show experiment? And a lot of people that are going to make these arguments often find themselves in spots where they're just trying to survive, where they're not wanting to take part in any of this. They're just wanting to get by. And the only counter argument I can really present, knowing what I know, to really explain in the most simplistic terms that I can think of, is that the people of this planet are a lot like that one relative that we all have. If you don't think you have one, it's probably you. But it's that one relative we all have, usually younger, who always was bailed out of trouble. That no matter what kind of mess they got in, somebody always came to bail them out. And right now, the people of this earth are in a point in their lifetime, in the grand scheme of things, to where that young troublemaker in the family is now a legal adult. And now that they are a legal adult, they can't be bailed out as much. And so the reality of the world itself is hitting us, and it's hitting us hard. To where a lot of people who do follow disclosure and spiritualistic groups try to paint these ETs out as being some miraculous beings that could help, that could easily just swoop in and fix all of our problems. And to an extent, they could. But going back to that younger relative, how are they supposed to learn the lessons of life if they ain't getting their ass kicked just a little bit? Just a little. Just a little. Enough to get the point across, not enough to cause them any major harm. Because let's face it, we all have to get a smack upside the head from time to time. It happens to everybody. And for most, that smack is enough to realize it's time for something different to happen. Well, guess what? We've been slapped across the face quite a few times now, in the last few years alone. The person who's trying to slap some sense into us, their hand is bright red, glowing, slightly pulsating. And there's a lot of damage we got to clean up. To where, to an extent, we're going to have to burn off the plastic molding that we've tried to develop around this world. Try to make it look pretty, like we're not having any issues. None of that. We have to acknowledge that no matter what state we're in, we're always going to have conflicts. But this idea of waiting for someone else to take action has got to stop, man. We got to engage in the conversations because that is always the first domino. And once a sign that domino has been toppled over, banning of social media pages, trying to target figures like Elon Musk after he bought out Twitter, trying to bully and harass anybody who does not conform, trying to prey on this need for human beings to feel like they have a sense of belonging into some sort of group. That has always been the appeal of religious groups, community projects, cliques in school, all of those. Those are attempts to grip onto one of the most basic needs that the human being has always longed for. And evolutionary speaking, that very need to find our tribe appeals to the fact that that's been the one thing that's helped us power through, no matter what gets thrown at us, is the ability to come together. Why do you think there's so much push as to try to put against blacks, whites, Asians, Russians, Americans? These are just labels. And as long as we feed into this idea, we feed into combating each other for some of the slightest differences, the truly corrupt assholes are going to have the playground all to themselves. But the fact of the matter is, going back to why these ETs would even bother, is because much like the family members who bailed out that younger, troublesome family member, maybe it's a younger brother, sister, cousin, whatever the case may be, the love is still there to see the potential of what we can become. You don't have to necessarily believe the time travel, all this and that, the galactic wars and all that. Why would they bother? Is because they still see the potential in us that we have yet to see within ourselves. And when we come to that realization, We may even see some of the corrupt ones that have been trying to take us all down flip sides, have a change of heart. Because they themselves have been in need of a wake-up call. Only bending to what they thought was their tribe when now they're too scared to leave. At the end of the day, we're all still just trying to figure out what the hell this world's all about. When you find the right people, when you find the right stances to take, it can change you down to your very DNA. It can allow for unseen potentials. It can allow you to become the hero that stops these travesties from ever happening again. Believe me, I was not expecting there to be such a spiritualistic viewpoint in all this, but wouldn't you say that's the goal? To become the heroes that we all needed? That's as usual. Who would win in a race, an iron snail or a magnetic hair? Wouldn't the hair just get stuck to the snail? Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is probably a good point to leave this off at. Please feel free to leave any comments you have to further the discussion in the comments of wherever you're seeing or hearing this. I do try to look at all the messages, but remember, I do have a civilian job that takes up some of my time. So I may not get to everybody, but I do see it eventually. And I also kind of want to cut out of here because today happens to be one of my best friend's birthdays, and while tomorrow is my own. So I'm going to go party. Much love. Take care. See y'all next time.
Shooters or ladies in a trance can't resist his asteroid dance. Meteor showers lighting up skies with his charm, no surprise. Planets cheer when he arrives. Jovian nights come alive. Solar flares in his control. Romance written in black hole. Martian cities light up in glee. Skyways open, love is free. Saturn rings a serenade. Harmony in the stars display. He's the Intergalactic Gigolo. Galaxy-wide, he's the show. Spreading love everywhere he goes. Stars and laughter in his flow. He's the Intergalactic Gigolo. Galaxy-wide, he's the show. Spreading love everywhere he goes. Stars and laughter in his flow. He's the Intergalactic Gigolo. Galaxy-wide, he's the show. Spreading love everywhere he goes. Stars and laughter in his flow. He's the Intergalactic Gigolo. Galaxy-wide, he's the show.